What's up? What's up? Ano ne? Hello? Hello? Can you hear? Wala rin. Wala rin. Hindi ko rin marinig yung boses ko. Alright. Tanggalin mo kaya yung ano? Tanggalin mo yung microphone. Oh. Baka yung microphone mo, tanggalin mo na lang yung microphone para ano, yung default na microphone ng computer mo ang gagamitin niya. Unplug mo lang yung unplug mo na lang yung microphone mo. O di kaya ay akyat ka sa phone mo. Di para yung oo. Di ba? Parang pwede, di ba? Akyat ka sa phone mo. Anong nangyari sa sound? Thomas, akyat ka Thomas para to the rescue. Halika ko Thomas. Para magkarinigan tayo dito lahat. Isang kan use speaker mo. Ha? Microphone na? Microphone na? Isa ka microphone na? Weh. Ha? Isa ka microphone na? Thomas! No, I can hear. Hindi marinig. Pati yung boses ko hindi ko rin marinig eh. Yung boses ko hindi ko rin marinig. Baka doon sa StreamYard, kapatid? Tingnan mo ngayon sa StreamYard mo na setting. Kapatid? Tingnan mo ngayon sa StreamYard mo na setting.
Nakamute pala ako.
Ayun. I-off mo na yung phone mo kasi nag-i-echo. Ayun. Si Mang Tomas. Si Mang Tomas. Hindi ko pa nakasama sa isang Elysian. Mang Tomas.
Halika na nga.
Akyat ka.
Umakyat ka na lang. Hindi na ako magbabasa. Umakyat ka habang ako'y nagbabasa. Thomas, halika, umakyat ka. Magbasa
Halika, Mang Tomas. Nako, huwag ka dyan sa baba. Sa taas ka. Para naman makita namin yung smile mo na palagi mong pinopromote.
Kaya nga. Halika na, umakyat ka na lang.
Bring your smile when you climb up.
So kapatid, tulungan mo ako magbasa. Ikaw yung magiging reaction video ngayon yan.
Ganon.
Magbabasa.
Malapit na kami mag-closing. Kasi
Oo.
ano ngayon eh,
Sige.
Ascension,
Kaya nga eh.
celebration. Kaya yun si Mrs. nagpre-prepare ng altar.
Ako din magpe-prepare pa. Kaya since I promise, I'm going to read this page 81. Kahit ilang page lang, mabasa natin.
Sige.
Doon. Kaya
Para magkaroon tayo ng reflection diyan sa ilang page?
basahin natin. Our holy
Yeah.
wedding ceremony. Jesus was born to humankind 2,000 years ago. God intended that Jesus find his bride and that they would stand in the position of Adam and Eve, who were lost at the very beginning of human history. Together, Jesus and his bride were to have grown to attain the position of true parents, providing living examples of a true husband and wife, parents and family. However, God's hope for Jesus and Israel was not realized. The Lord went a secondary course, dying for us on the cross. We cannot imagine how devastated he must have been. When Jesus returns, his priority is to find the bride with whom he will create a true family, society, nation, and world. Through the true parents, the sorrows of heaven and earth can be alleviated, and the victorious foundation for God's ideal world can be laid. In this providence, the prophesied marriage supper of the Lamb, the day of our holy wedding, was the turning point, the day when God won his victory and recovered his lost glory. Furthermore, this was the day of joy for humankind, as it inaugurated a new history in which all can live together, not only with their true father, but also with their true mother. At the age of 15, Sun Myung Moon received his mission from Jesus Christ on Mount Myeongdo. It was a mission that would bring him severe hardship. It led him to study in Japan and to teach God's word in North Korea after Korea's interdependence, where he would face life-threatening hardship and unspeakable suffering. Communist Party officials and police cruelly tortured him to the brink of death. Tossed out as a lifeless body, he revived and continued his mission, only to be arrested once again and sent to a forced labor camp near the city of Hongnam. It was only the arrival of UN troops that saved him from execution there. With two of his followers, he headed south to begin his ministry again. Amid the class of communist soldiers and UN troops, they were among the last to cross the frozen Imjin River into South Korea, and from there they walked hundreds of kilometers to the southern part of the peninsula. After planting his church in Busan, he settled in Seoul. Yet his trials continued, and once again he was imprisoned. By this time, the South Korean government, this course of hardship, during which time he relentlessly focused on teaching many new members about God and the mission of the Messiah, was the course he had to pass through to meet the only begotten daughter prepared by God to hold the marriage supper of the Lamb. Members of the early Unification Church endured bitter ordeals together with Father Moon. As the year 1960 approached, they were filled with indescribable hope. Father Moon was turning 40, and he was prophesied that this would be the year of the holy wedding of God's first son and daughter, the only begotten son and only begotten daughter. And that promise was fulfilled at the Chungpadong Church at 4 in the morning on March 27, 1960, the first of the third lunar month, when spring was in full bloom. Father Moon and I held our historic engagement ceremony. He had invited 40 men and 40 women to witness the ceremony, but members wishing to see us had come in great numbers, and the small church was packed to overflowing. The engagement ceremony, held in two parts, was conducted in a holy atmosphere. It concluded with Father Moon's benediction, reporting the profound meaning of the ceremony to heaven and earth. The 6,000-year history of humankind, he prayed, was the anguished course necessary to receive the true parents. That would come, that Jesus would not become the true parent was the sorrow of all people. But the day of our engagement ceremony was the blessed day that finally relieved that sorrow. That is the engagement ceremony. On April 11, 1960, the first part of the Holy Wedding in Western attire. And April 11, 1960, the second part of the Holy Wedding on traditional Korean attire. Thank you so much, Candid Heart, Thomas Sagayo. Thank you po, mga kapatid. 15 days after the engagement ceremony at 10 a.m. on April 11, 1960, the 16th day of the third month by the lunar calendar, we conducted the Holy Wedding. 700 or so members chosen from our churches across Korea gathered at Chongpadong Church to attend this splendid event, long awaited by our Heavenly Parent, because even more members flocked to attend the Holy Wedding than the engagement ceremony. Long awaited by our Heavenly Parent, because even more members flocked to attend the Holy Wedding than the engagement ceremony, the church was overflowing, and those who could not enter the building filled the alleyway beside it. The atmosphere was nonetheless solemn and reverent. The small chapel of the church was decorated beautifully and meaningfully for the occasion. The walls and floors the walls and floor were covered with white cloth, and a platform was set up to the left of the door. Dressed in a long white skirt and top, with a long veil covering my head, I walked down the stairs from the second floor, arm in arms with the bridegroom, as members sang the holy song of the banquet. All in attendance warmly welcomed us, and the holy wedding ceremony thus commenced. The first ceremony of the holy wedding was held in Western style clothing, and the second ceremony was held in traditional Korean style clothing, complete with robes and headdresses. The significance and value of this joyful occasion should have been praised, glorified, and honored by all nations and all peoples. Yet it was marred by a distressing incident. The day before the ceremony, the Ministry of Home Affairs, responding to a Christian's group accusation, arrested and interrogated Father Moon. He was able to return to his quarters in the church only after being subjected to humiliation questions until 11 p.m. Yet, under the grace of God and the Holy Spirit, Father Moon and I and the entire congregation put aside this painful experience as if it had never happened and conducted the marriage supper of the Lamb with serene hearts. God's predestined will was that his only begotten son and daughter would become one flesh through the marriage supper of the Lamb, and that through them the dwelling place of God would be with men and women. True men and women are the rightful rulers of creation. The entire universe, heaven and earth, the holy wedding, finally realized this ideal, which Adam and Eve had failed to achieve. Thus, these ceremonies mark my formal enthronement as the mother of the universe and mother of peace. After the ceremony, Father Moon and I, as husband and wife, ate at the same table for the first time. It goes without saying that newlyweds expect to go on a honeymoon and dream of their cozy life together. But it was not so with us. Our thoughts were fixed only upon God and the church. Nonetheless, I treasured every glance we shared and felt a love infinitely profound, a holy love that we wished to bequeath to all humankind. We then changed into bright Korean traditional wedding outfits, and my husband and I sang and danced to return glory to God, enjoying a merry time together with the members. When the members called for the bride to sing, I sang a song called When the Spring Comes. And it says, When the spring comes, azaleas bloom in the mountains and meadows. Where the azaleas bloom, so does my heart. Spring signifies freshness and newness. I love spring, as it is the season of hope. Spring brings with it the expectation that as we leave the cold winter behind, our days will be vibrant with life. It awakens our dreams. As I sang, I was thinking that the history of the Unification Church should begin anew with this coming of spring. The appearance of the family of the true parents on earth, that day flung open a new door in the history of God's dispensation. The day of the holy wedding ceremony, conducted after we had lived through perilous years, was the day of God's greatest delight. In the New Testament's book of Revelation, it is written that the marriage supper of the Lamb will take place when the Lord comes again at the end of times. That prophecy was fulfilled by the holy wedding, by which the only Son and only begotten daughter, lost at the beginning of human history, were brought together as bridegroom and bride and anointed as the true parents. As we were joined as husband and wife, I made a firm resolution in front of God. During my lifetime, my beloved husband and I will bring to a conclusion the history of the providence of restoration through indemnity, during which God has laboriously toiled. I know that what hurts God's heart more than anything else are the religious conflicts that takes place in his name. Without fail, we will end them. A small boat on heavy seas, on page 88. In the side streets and workplaces of South Korea, people were whispering out of worry, anxious over the fate of their nation. Doesn't doesn't it feel like something is about to happen? One would say, to which his friend would respond, I feel the same way. We live in troubled times. If only there was someone who would set this world right. I was sure such worries would soon dissipate. The year of our holy wedding ceremony, 1960, was a turning point where great changes were taking place both at home and abroad. In South Korea, the people's longing for democracy burst forth and they ousted the authoritarian Liberal Party. Overseas, John F. Kennedy was elected President of the United States, and we felt the way opening toward a new era. But history is never that simple. The rifts of the Cold War grew deeper, and conflict worsened between the communist realm and the free world. A flame of popular outcry for democracy flared up in the Soviet bloc nations of Eastern Europe, but the state crushed its advocates, and the fire grew dim again. It seemed that the time for peace was not yet at hand. People continued praying for a true leader to appear. Great changes also were taking place for the Unification Church. Virtually, The whole of Korea had stood in opposition to our church, with Christianity issuing the most scathing criticism. But now, on the foundation of embracing a young woman leader, the true mother, we began ecumenical dialogues and transitioned from Christian denomination to global religious movement. Our members prayed that we would be a beacon, shining forth a new hope of salvation. In particular, women who so long to have been who so long have been oppressed perceive that a true woman's movement has been set in motion. 3 days after the holy wedding ceremony, my husband and I visited Juan Farm in Incheon, not far from the border with North Korea. With several members, we planted grapevines and ginkgo and salcova trees. As I planted a young sapling, I offered a prayer. May you grow well and become a big, strong tree that will bear the fruit of hope for the people of the world. I was not praying only for that particular tree, but for success in the mission given to my husband and me. As a tree provides people with fruit as well as shade, so should we and all people of faith. From the outset, high waves and strong winds battered the small boat of our newly married life. Unfortunately, I was prepared. Fortunately, I was prepared for that. It is said that newlyweds know nothing but happiness. But what but that was not our main purpose. My husband and I were not in a position to focus very much on our personal contentment. Our first living space was a small, sparsely decorated room at the back of Chongpadong Church. On one side, it connected to the chapel, and on the other, to the tiniest of courtyards. Our kitchen was small and old-fashioned, with a rough cement floor. I cooked for my husband in that kitchen, which was always smoke-filled from coal briquettes. From the first day I prepared his meal, I was quite at home in that kitchen, which was to many little family, similar to many my little family had occupied. I was quite deft with a cutting knife, even though my hands were cold. When people saw me preparing the various dishes without much troubles, they were surprised. Until a few weeks prior, they had thought of me as only a teenage nursing student. The church was always crowded with members, and my husband and I seldom spent time by ourselves. In such a public setting, Father Moon and I would sit across each other and talk about our plans for the world. Members would show concern and say to us, "Please, you really should eat now." You would look, we would look at the clock and often see it was 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and we hadn't even a thought to lunch, and we hadn't given a thought to lunch. I focused on the many tasks that would be entrusted to me in the future. I realized that not only Korea, but also the rest of the world was expecting me to extend my helping hand. Beginning with our first daughter, Yejin, I gave birth to children one after another. The church headquarters had served also as our home The church headquarters that served also as our home was a small and poorly insulated Japanese-style house, and I suffered postpartum ailments as a result of delivering babies there. I was young, but as women have done from time immemorial, I quietly endured the pain of childbirth. Within my heart, Heavenly Parent was present at every moment, no matter how difficult the situation and surroundings. I was filled with joy. Never for a moment did I lack the helping hand of God, working His miracles in the background. Within a few years, our small headquarters were filled to bursting with our many children. Perhaps that is why they grew up loving and caring for one another. I consider them to be a miniature expression of God. I would kiss their cheeks, and chat affectionately with them, and I prayed for them ceaselessly. I knew that God comes to dwell in the home where parents and children are harmonious. Even before our wedding, with God's providence at the forefront of my mind, I resolved to have 13 children. Today, people look at you askance if you have many children. But I saw that God wanted 12 to signify the perfection of east, west, north, and south. When you add one corresponding to the central position, you get 13, which opens the way for the continued development of the providence to its ultimate conclusion. God's providence for the salvation of humankind is not something that happens in one generation. To carry it out, God has sought out and established central people throughout history. 2,000 years ago, how did God send Jesus, his only begotten Son, without original sin to this earth through the people of Israel? The Bible records that God has to restore a pure lineage in several stages. There are unresolved issues connected to this lineage that I must set straight during my lifetime. So I set to recover and rightly establish the lineage of goodness centered on heaven, in order to give rebirth and resurrection to this complicated lineage, and thus transform it into the true lineage, whose center is God. I willingly took the risk that come with pregnancy and childbirth, including managing the birth pains that put a woman's life in God's hand. I gave birth to 14 children over the period of 20 years. The first four were born in our small private quarters at Chonkadong. It was not until my fifth child that I was able to go to a hospital. Though it taxed my body, I gave birth to children year after year. Our second daughter died a few days after her birth. Our final four were delivered by cesarean section. It is rare for a woman to go through a C-section more than once. When I said that I would undergo it for the third time, my doctor hesitated, saying it was dangerous, especially for a woman of my age. The doctor did not understand how I could insist so calmly on having another C-section, and he wanted to explain the issue to my husband. I assured him that my husband would agree with me, and I went through it for a third and a fourth time, thus fulfilling a promise I had made to God. My husband, being a charismatic spiritual leader, sometimes received unwanted attention from women. There was once a woman who appeared in front of him claiming to be Eve, and another who hid under his bed. As God's true son and as a true husband and father, he never wavered. He and I, as well, felt only sympathy for such women. I encountered similar advances. Once, while my husband was away on a world tour, a strange person shouted loudly, "I am Adam!" jumped in front of me, and tried to assault me. At the time, I was 7 months pregnant. I was so shocked that I almost miscarried. I encountered the same forms of hardship that Father Mundi. At times, my reality turned into a whirlpool of tests and ordeals, and in my heart, I would feel like a little boat floating on rough seas. Knowing well my mission, I overcome those hardships through prayer. My silent perseverance and constant prayer actually deepened the members' devotional life. I always strove to maintain a generous heart, and my unwavering faith as a young person encountered those around me. The greater my absolute obedience to and reverence for God, the more hope everyone felt. Sometimes my elders would hold my hand and whisper to my ear, "Thank you so much for the grace you have shown us through your sacrificial love." Victory through perseverance on page 93. Oh no, I've lost another pair of shoes. Even before the members would finish his sentence, those around him would know what had happened. Poverty sometimes makes people do bad things. At the end of Sunday services, we often would find that a pair or two of shoes were missing from the shoe rack. So whenever I had a little extra money, I would buy new shoes for members who had lost them. I also prayed that the person who had taken the shoes would set his or her life straight. Between 200 and 300 people would attend our services and other events, and there was never enough rice to serve them all. So we made porridge by boiling barley in a large iron pot. The as the event progressed inside the church, outside we would make a wood fire and cook the barley porridge. Members would sit down in little clusters and share bowls of porridge, and they were more grateful for this than anything else. All this is a gift from God, they would say. When I was pregnant, I craved tangerines, but we could not afford them. They were so expensive. One members learned about this, however, and bought some tangerines for me. I ate 6 or 7 of them on one spot. I was so grateful, I cried. Oh, I remember my house has a um, orange tree in my backyard. And I am so happy now knowing that mother loved tangerines. I was able to offer the last fruit of this very sweet oranges to True Mother when she was in Las Vegas. I picked them and oranges and lemons, big and sweet. I was able to send it to Las Vegas, and my sister Mary Hida, was able to give that orange basket full of orange and lemon, and she said she put it in True Mother's room in Las Vegas. I'm happy to hear that True Mother loved tangerines. I hope that reminds me. This is a picture of them. You can see. True Mother Moon together with Unification Church wives and their young children on page 94. When a church holiday would approach, I felt more anxious than excited or happy. I would have to start making preparation 2 weeks in advance to organize the deliveries of the offering table, towers of fruits and delicacies, banners, flowers, and candles, hoping that there would be enough for each member to have an apple or a candy. Once we had made this offering to God, I would feel immense satisfaction. From my birth until my marriage, my path had not been easy, and after marrying, personal challenges impacted not just me, but also our movement. So I never deviated from the path of faith, obedience, and love for God. Just as Satan tested Jesus and Father Moon, he tested me. I persevered through those ordeals with ever deepening devotion because it was at such time that I felt most keenly the grace of God. In the midst of pain, God came very close to me and guided me with pillars of cloud and fire. My husband and I always conversed intensely on various matters, so we could do so out of our infinite trust in each other. We went through so much together that we could understand each other with only a look. The life of Father Moon and the path I have walked bear as an uncanny resemblance. Most people assume that I was so happy and that I wanted for nothing. You received the seal from God as his only begotten daughter, they would think. And you were born as a perfect being. Therefore you attained your position with no effort. Many people were like this. They believed that as the mother of the universe, I blissfully had met Father Moon, formed a happy family, and enjoyed life. That describes my life from one perspective, but I have scaled mountains of treacherous and impossible as any in this world. I was able to surmount them all with my husband's love, which was more than any wife has ever received. Although I had 14 children, I never once thought that I had too many. Nonetheless, My children had to go through difficult experiences. They were When they went out to play, local people would glare at them. Your father is San Yun, isn't he? Adults would shout at an innocent 5 years old. Do you know what your father does? Unification Church is creating such a disturbance in the world. While in Korea, they were criticized for being the sons and daughters of Sun Myung Moon. And when we moved to the United States, they faced discrimination for being Asian. It pained me to see my children suffer, but I did not lament or blame others. I held them in my arms and set an example for them by offering prayers of gratitude. My husband and I cared for our children with love and devotion. But because we had so much work to do for the church and the providence, we weren't able to spend much time with them. One day, when my husband was on his world tour, Eugene, barely 3 years old, sat on the bedroom floor and began to draw. Normally, he liked to draw cars or bikes, but that day he clumsily drew a face on the white paper. Even though I knew that it was his father, I asked him, Eugene, who is that? Eugene did not answer me. I drew a face on another piece of paper. Though it looked different from the first one, it was still, without a doubt, his father's face. Eugene was usually very active, but on that day he sat quietly and continued to draw. He did not he did not grow tired of drawing of his father's face, even after spending the whole day at it. And he did not stop drawing it the next day or the day after. It was only when his father returned that he stopped drawing. I can still remember quite vividly how brightly he smiled at his father as he was embraced by him. It was as if he had been given the world. 7 sons and 7 daughters. On page 96, True Father and I offered 3 generations as a true family to God, culminating when we with all our children, their spouses, and our adult grandchildren taught God's word and ministered the blessing in 180 nations in what we call the Jubilee years, 2006 and 2007. I risked my life to bring our children into the world, and now they have made their own mission and responsibilities that heaven wishes them to fulfill, and that I also hope they can accomplish. Although, as their parents, I may be unable to help them enough, I pray for them every day. If I had experienced only joyful things, I never would have been able to look into people's deepest, innermost hearts. I never would have known the joys of the kingdom of heaven. I have passed through the bottom of hell and experienced every kind of bitterness in life. God wanted me to train myself. What I needed was untiring faith, strong will, and perseverance. That is how I reached this point today. No matter who you are, you will not experience only sweetness and joy on the path to the kingdom of heaven. Going through spiritual struggles is, in fact, the most precious blessing. Through, through it, you can feel the grace of God. Only when you pass those tests can you be born anew as a true human being. The fruit of perseverance will grow and ripen within you, and one day will become the source of your deepest pride. I step from here, um, maybe uh, just one more paragraph. As I grew up in a time of global turbulence from which my homeland of Korea was not exempt, as our people endured Imperial Japan's colonial rule and Korean War, a wild rush of confused ideas and values wreaked havoc on our tradition. The people of the world, even the Christian nations, struggled as their societies descended into chaos. Where were we to turn? And I will. Oh, this is just one more page, one more, few more paragraph. There, when there was no institution to depend on and no shelter to protect my heart, I remembered one thing: God is my Father. I grew up holding the belief that I would realize the dream and hope of God, convinced that within my lifetime I would complete the long, sorrowful, providential journey to restore God's original ideal for His children. I retained my faith no matter what happened, that it was with His heart, it was with this heart that I decided to receive the blessing in marriage with Sun Myung Moon, and I with him to work to prevent religious conflict and factions from continuing beyond my generation. Conflicts caused by religious division must stop now. I am also determined to resolve racial division and the conflicts that had arisen from them. In 1982, I accomplished one of my promises to heaven. In the 2 decades after our holy wedding, I bore 14 children, 7 sons and 7 daughters. When they were just days old, my husband and I offered each child to God and the world. Each has supported us heroically on their own way, and each is now pioneering their own course. I had given us, they had given us more than 40 grandchildren. Now I'm always on the move, traveling the 5 seas and 6 continents, working to establish a world without war and conflict, and to release God from his sorrow. And that ends page 98. And next chapter is chapter 4. Thank you so much for all of you for waiting and listening. I really appreciate all of you. Thomas Sagayo, um, and Thomas Sagayo, Candid Heart, Lito Juliano, Super Sheppy, Franz Jester. Thank you so much. And um, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat na sumuporta at Emoterang Buwangi. Thank you so much, my sister. I never know that you will be here. Thank you. And thank you for staying, Super Sheppy. Thank you for Thomas Sagayo. At shout out to you, Emoterang Buwangi, for joining. Thank you, Candid Heart. And hello sa lahat. And I hope um, you can you learn something from this um, live stream. I know this is not much, but I feel this book has so much to offer, so much to understand from the life of Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. We fondly call her True Mother. I felt her book is a true testament to what we can all can learn from a woman of virtue, a woman of deep faith in her resolve to relieve God's suffering and pain. And I think that is the most glorious dream and glorious goal of every humankind, is to be able to feel that we are all responsible to relieve God of that pain. And that's why I love this book, because we can learn so much from her. She had the experience of more than any woman in history can um, bear. Just imagine bearing 14 children. I had three, and I am uh, way above my head in thinking of having to have one more. But to have 14 children and to be able to endure the suffering of being the wife of, I would say, being the wife of Reverend Sun Myung Moon is not a bed of roses, because if your husband is only thinking of how he can care and lead and live for the sake of others and make a world of peace, That is a hard task. And for a couple to think that way, I believe that is why it is very commendable. And I appreciate all of you for coming and for joining me in this live stream. And may God bless you and your family. And as today we celebrate the 8th year anniversary of um, Reverend Sun Myung Moon's ascension. It was 8 years ago when he passed to the spirit world. And amazing how this true mother have brought the will and dream of Reverend Moon and dream of God to even in a higher level at this time. This is a woman who lost her husband 8 years ago, and yet her determination and her love for true father's desire to realize God's kingdom of heaven and earth is still alive, and that what she wanted all of us to understand is so admirable. And I hope all of you can, thank you so much, my kapatid Lito Juliano TV and Super Sheppy for coming, Thomas Sagayo, and Motarang Bongit, and Candid Heart, and Rose Cooking Blogs, Franz Jeffer, and Michelle Babon. Thank you so much for waiting and for joining me at this broadcast. May God bless you, and to all of you who will be getting the chance to read this book, Mother of Peace. I highly recommend that you read and get this book. And God bless you all, and have a happy, happy day. And God bless you. See you soon. Thank you so much.